On Newsnight Scotland tonight, a little more on the Great Debate. George Osbourne, supported by Ed Balls and Danny Alexander, says he won't do a currency union deal with an independent Scotland. The Yes campaign say that's a bluff. Who's the electorate going to believe? Good evening. You've heard it on this programme for 2 nights already this week, and you've probably just heard it already again this evening. So it's no real surprise that the Chancellor and his UK political counterparts have announced they won't countenance a formal currency union with an independent Scotland. But there's plenty of debating mileage yet in the issue. We'll investigate further shortly. First, Hugh Williams brings us right up to date.
Up until today, there might have been a bit of a fudge on the currency front. The SNP saying we'll keep the pound, the coalition government saying that's a bad idea. Today, the fudge was apparently ruled out.
The SNP says that if Scotland becomes independent, there will be a currency union and Scotland will share the pound. People need to know that is not going to happen.
It won't happen. I wouldn't recommend it. Scotland will not keep the pound if Scotland chooses independence.
The currency union wouldn't work for Scotland if it was independent. It wouldn't work for the rest of the UK, and therefore a currency union just isn't going to happen.
After his speech in Edinburgh, the Chancellor went on to a factory visit south of the border. So is ruling out currency union just bluff and bluster, an attempt to bully the Scots?
Absolutely not. Look, I don't have a vote in this Scottish referendum, nor do people in England. But the message goes out loud and clear. We are better together, better as a United Kingdom. And the people of Scotland need to know the facts before they vote. And today I was spelling out the facts that when the Scottish government, when Alex Salmond asserts he could just share the pound with the rest of the UK, that is not the case.
But the Scottish government insisted keeping the pound would be best for the rest of the UK and for an independent Scotland.
There's a number of reasons. Firstly, England trades about £60 billion into Scotland every year. It trades more to Scotland than it does to India, China, South Africa, Brazil put together. English businesses, if they were suddenly faced with a different currency in Scotland, would incur hundreds of millions of pounds of transaction costs. I don't think many English businesses would want that, nor would English individuals who come to Scotland on holiday or to visit relatives. Secondly, the balance of payments in the UK benefits to the tune of about £30 billion every year from oil and gas exports. If you take that out of the UK balance of payments, the trade deficit for the rest of the UK increases substantially, which has an impact on the value of sterling.
But perhaps there could be a plan B.
Having its own currency would give Scotland the most degrees of freedom, the most flexibility to run its own economic policy. It would give it the most flexibility to respond in case a big shock hits. So it would be able to move its own interest rates, it would be able to set its own spending and tax rates, and manage its own debt levels.
And there's enthusiasm for that idea from some Yes campaigners.
You know, you're talking about fiat money. That's what you're talking about. None of the paper money printed by any government in the world today has any intrinsic value. It's just paper printed by them. And the reason folk believe some of it and don't believe the Zimbabwean dollar, for example, is that they have a degree of confidence that that paper will hold its value. A separate Scottish currency will have a fair degree of oil denomination in its strength makeup. And there is no problem in having a separate Scottish currency. I mean, we've got our own banknotes at the moment, so why we don't print a separate Scottish currency, I really don't understand.
Well, I'm joined now, and Labour's Dr Michael Kelly, who's supporting Better Together. Good evening to all of you. Good evening. Michael, if there's a yes vote, and let's say Ed Balls is Chancellor after the election in 2015, can you see a position where Labour MPs and MSPs in Scotland, which is in the process of becoming independent, would back Ed Balls' position of saying no to a currency union?
Yes, to a person.
Even if it was deemed to be the least best option for an independent Scotland? Labour politicians would say no to it?
The Labour politicians in England would be concerned with...
No, I was asking about Labour politicians in Scotland that was in the process of becoming independent.
Yes, but I believe that Labour in Scotland would be fully behind Balls' decision today if he was the Chancellor, because I think to reverse this would be politically very, very difficult and embarrassing, and economically the Conservatives in England would blow holes in the argument, so Labour would lose the election. So I think when Balls says no, he means no, and Labour would back that.